Hello and welcome back to the Opposites Abroad podcast, a podcast covering all things travel. A boring Charlie Bosco here from BC and an interesting jet-lagged, wide-eyed, kind of, / closed-eyed TT down in Denver. TT, explain the journey that you have undertaken in the last 5 days.
I did a whirlwind trip back and forth to Israel, and yesterday was brutal. Well, our last podcast is like one of the things we talked about was like bad flights, and this one was brutal. We had to wake up at 1 a.m. to go to the airport. Got there, went through everything super smooth. Got to the lounge and sit down lounge, start having tea, and they've announced their lounge that flight's canceled. Everyone leave the lounge.
This is in Tel Aviv.
This is in Tel Aviv, and we're flying KLM to Amsterdam, and totally canceled. And the flight, so I normally fly United, but on this trip I ended up flying Delta because United kept canceling my flight, and that throws me off anyways because I'm not used to the airline, and I'm not used to how they do things, where I'm used to, for better or for worse, how United does things. So we go to the gate. There's a bunch of people there, super unhappy, of course. There's no plan. And I get a text from Delta saying, hey, it's okay, you've been rebooked on another flight that leaves at 10 a.m. And it's like 4 a.m. at this point. And it says 10 a.m. to LA. So I'm like, okay, well, that's good. And I talked to the gate agent, and I'm like, well, what do we do? Like, I don't have a ticket. And she goes, well, you need to go back through security, which is like a massive, massive hike through the airport. So walk all the way. I mean, it's got to be over a mile. Walk all the way through security, get up to security, and they're like, no, you can't go. You can't leave. Like, you have to go back to the gate, and they'll get you out. I'm like, why didn't they tell me that in the first place? So walk all the way back there, and then she's like, oh yeah, you just go down this other hallway and do like a back way out. And it's like, if you just told me that in the first place, that would have saved me. And then by then it's like my journey hasn't even started, and I'm like sweaty and tired and over it before it even goes. So get out, go to check in, and wait in a super long line because now we're on El Al Israeli Airlines. Wait in this huge line, get up to the gate, and the lady's like, oh, you can't check in yet because you can only check in 4 hours before.
So okay, go on.
So, in the terminal, and there's no seats, there's nowhere to stand. It's like 4:30 in the morning or something. So and this is like there's some travel tips in here. One is just be persistent and keep asking people for help, and don't take no for an answer. So I went up to the information desk and said, "Hey, I am canceled and there's no seats, and what do we do?" And I connected with the lady because she had a Harry Potter pin on her lapel, and I have a little Harry Potter tattoo on my wrist. So I I was like, twins. And then she gave us breakfast vouchers, and we went downstairs and had breakfast, went back up, and I was like, I am not waiting this line again. And so I just like walked around all of like security and all this stuff, went up to someone, I said, hey, we already waited in this huge line, we just need our ticket. And she goes, well, go meet with the supervisor at row like 58 or whatever. Go talk to him. He says, nope, you have to go wait in that huge line again. And I look at him, I go, I'm not waiting in that huge line again. And I walked and I skipped in front of everybody and went to another thing. And then this really angry, like, big guy comes up to me with a suit on. And he's like, why are you cutting in line? Like, what are you doing? And I go, well, the lady told me I didn't have to wait in the line because I already had waited in the line. And I'm just trying to get my ticket. Like, my flight was canceled. And he's like, oh, who told you that? And I go, I don't remember her name. She was in row whatever. She's not even there anymore. And so he was like, okay. So that seemed like an hour.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah,
Every now and
thank
then
you.
a little white lie has its place in life.
And it's one of those things, like, I'm by nature a rule follower and someone who believes in the rule of law.
Yeah,
But I
you don't like
believe
people jumping lines normally.
No, but I don't like stupid things, and it's like, why in the world didn't they tell me when I got in the line in the first place? Because I told them what was going on, like, right at the beginning of the line. The people say, well, there's no point in waiting in line because you can't check in until 4 hours for your flight. And then I would have gone, oh, okay. But they're just like, yeah, you just get in line. So if you're not going to help me and give me the information I need to be able to function, then I'm not going to follow your rules. So got tickets, went through. It ended up being smooth. But flight leaves at 10. Oh, and then their tickets say standby on them, so there's not any seat selections, which just stresses me out to begin with. So we go to the lounge. We actually get on the plane, and I got an aisle seat, which was made me happy. But I was surrounded by all these, like, 20-something, early 20s, Israeli. I don't know if they're students or what they were, and there was a guy that was sitting across the aisle from me. Must have been a very popular guy because there was girls just in the aisle the entire flight, like right next to me.
Really?
Yeah.
What, for this guy?
Yeah, just chatting with him and leaving their seats, and I noticed it on the way out there, and it must be a cultural thing, but the Israelis don't tend to sit in their seats very well on the planes. They get up and wander around, and they stand in the aisles, and they huddle around the bathrooms if they're not going to the bathroom, which is not something I'm culturally used to. So it was I would say for at least 10 of the 15-hour flight, I had somebody, either a girl or a guy, standing right next to me.
That's
that's
irritating.
At the end, I really wanted to punch somebody, and I was like doing passive aggressive things, like crossing my leg and putting my foot out in the aisle, stretching and like bumping into people with my hand, like stretching my arms. Like I was so over it. And the lady next to me was probably about my age, and I looked at her at the end and I said, you know what? And she goes, what? And I go, I'm really gonna miss having a butt in my face for 10 hours straight. And she goes, she was Israeli, and she goes, these younger people have no situational awareness, so they just haven't been taught to care about other people, and they just don't think about it. And then I saw her later kind of telling her husband the story. but yeah, that was super, super irritating. So got to LA, and then got on actually United, strangely enough, back to Denver, which went smoothly, but got to Denver about 10:30 last night. So I don't know. It's probably 30 hours total of travel time. It was a brutal day. And then, as you know, I'm flying off on another trip here in my flight leaves in 8 hours.
I don't know how you do it. I mean, I've done lots of flying, but I don't like it at all. And if I've been on a flight, I don't want to hear about a flight for a few days at least. And
yeah.
I mean, but just quickly listening to that story, always like to take a lesson from it. I would say two things immediately jump out that beyond what you've already said about just keep going. Don't be overweight, because it's really, you cover a lot of ground in airports, and if walking a mile is a big deal for you physically, that's hard.
Let me look and see how far I walked yesterday.
And the other thing I would say that I know you subscribe to is don't check in luggage, because
yes,
you can be agile. You're not saying, where's my bag? I gave my bag to this person. Everything you need is with you on your person.
I walked almost 7 miles yesterday, and
that's pretty impressive considering you're on a plane 15 hours.
Yeah, in that 30 hours, I walked almost 7 miles, and that's just through airports.
That's pretty. I mean, what's your step count? People say you're supposed to aim for 10,000 a day. Is that more than 10,000? That's got to be. I'd assume.
I never look at step count.
I'm just doing some maths. Yeah, that's definitely more than 10,000 a day. You're good on your. I don't know what these apps.
It's probably at least a million.
Or your Apple
it's a
Watch.
Million. It's like a million steps, I think.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, don't check bags, because it would have been a nightmare. There was another guy that was on our flight, and he ended up going to flying to Athens, this other roundabout way home, and had a big huge bag, and he had to go get his bag from baggage claim, and it made it like a nightmare for him to try to get out. I was packed unbelievably light. And on a trip like this, where I was flying a bunch of weird airlines, because I was flying weird airlines on the way out too, or the way to Israel, because it's just really difficult to get into Israel right now, that I had basically, my bag was the size of a personal item. So I don't have to worry about, am I going to be the last boarding group where my roller bag can't get on? Like I'm so light that as long as there's a seat in front of me, I can shove a bag under. I am absolutely good to go. But
you're going somewhere hot for 3 days. What do you need?
Exactly, and I still had to change of outfit for every day. I had clean clothes on my way home. I was absolutely fine. But I packed out of like this little like Louis Vuitton duffel bag that's super small, and it was just fine.
Yeah, but Israel. Why? We can't really talk about why you went. But what was it like trying to get into Israel? In terms of visas, travel logistics right now, because obviously they're still, I mean, I guess you could say they're always at war, but still very much at war in the Gaza Strip right now. It's very much a hot war, not a cold war right now. What was it like trying to get visas, book flights?
Booking flights is a huge pain in the ass. I had United there, Air Canada back. Air Canada canceled the trip. United rebooked me. United there, Lufthansa back. Lufthansa canceled the trip back. Then had to rebook on Delta. The flight out there was terrible. It was Denver to Atlanta to Paris to Tel Aviv. Normally you could fly like just straight from New York on United. Someone later told me that I was talking to in line that if you fly the El Al Israel flights, they basically never get canceled because it's Israel's flagship airline, and I flew back. So I would say if you're gonna go right now and you really want to get there, if you don't mind a butt in your face, I'd probably recommend trying to look at that airline versus maybe the American Airlines, which seem to cancel easily and have these convoluted routes.
But why are they cancelling it? Because the situation, I know the situation is always evolving, but it doesn't seem like it's evolving day by day in terms of whether it's safe to land a plane or not. Why do they keep cancelling them?
I think that's part of it. I think every time there's something happens with Gaza or some bomb goes off somewhere, then the American Airlines get spooked and they start canceling flights. I don't know exactly what their plan is. They kept pushing it back, so it's like, okay, now we're going to start resuming on like this day, and then you look at it, and then it's like a week later, and then it's a week later, and a week later. So I'd say if you really want to go right now, I'd probably book that Israeli airline. And I would say even with the issues going on there, if you've always wanted to go to Israel and you're not someone who's super timid, you can do it. It's probably a good time to go because tourism's down 95%.
Yeah.
So there's no tourists around. The hotels are empty. Jerusalem's empty, and if you really want to see that stuff, it's probably a good time to go, assuming that you can handle the logistics and the stress of the potential for something to happen.
So what is the potential for something to happen?
Well, I think the Gaza stuff, you're not really going to be around there. You're going to be in Tel Aviv and probably Jerusalem is the two places. I mean, you might go to Bethlehem or something, but
they're surprisingly close to the Gaza Strip. What's Tel Aviv from Gaza? 100 k's, less than 100 miles.
Well, it's such a small country. I think it's the size of New Jersey, but for them, it's really pretty far away. It feels super far away when you're there. And it's so weird because you go out to like a fancy restaurant or a nice bar and everyone's just hanging out, and it's like there's a big war going on. There's reminders of it because they have pictures of the hostages everywhere, signs about the hostages everywhere. You can tell they're very proud of their country. There's Israeli flags everywhere. It's Pride Month, so there's pride flags everywhere lining all the streets. There's rainbow flags. Big posters of men kissing and holding hands and stuff, and things that you normally don't think of in the Middle East, because Israel's very Western and very progressive in a lot of ways. So, and I saw very very obviously gay male couples walking around that were flamboyant and just being themselves and living their best life, and which you certainly couldn't do in the rest of the Middle East. You certainly couldn't do that in Palestine. So I thought that was kind of nice to see there. But I was at a really nice bar, and I guess when something happens, they all get text messages from like the government saying you watch out or be careful. So at the bar, sirens start going off, and everyone starts looking at their phones, and then the everyone just gets up and starts shuffling into a hallway, in the kind of bowels of the restaurant, and people were saying, "Oh, missiles coming from Yemen," and one of the people I was with, just instead of going into this thing, he ran outside and actually got a picture of the Iron Dome taking out the missile above where we were, and you could hear like a boom, and I kind of ran out and just to get like a little video for like Instagram, ran out and looked at the street, but I didn't get the sky super well, and everyone's looking up in the sky and everyone else is shuffling in. But it's like everyone has their drinks. I have my glass of wine with me walking into the thing, and then you're in there for a few minutes, and then it's kind of the missile got taken out by the Iron Dome, and everyone just goes right back to what they're doing, and it's like there's no big deal. And what I heard somebody refer to it as they were lobbing a piece of bread at us. That's how worried they are about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a missile alert and your first reaction is to run outside, then you're obviously not very concerned.
Well, I'd say the person that ran outside was American.
Okay.
I
thought it was a local.
No, the Israelis were going down into the hallways. The American ran outside to try to get a picture of it.
Oh no! Okay. I just in that situation, I do what the locals do. I mean, there's wanting to increase your social media following, and then there's not getting killed by a rocket. So.
Yeah, and to be honest, it was an older guy. I don't think he even has social media. I just think he thought it was cool. I mean, for us as Americans, and it's like, you and I've traveled a lot, but when have you ever been someplace where a missile's fired at where you are, and it gets blown up by another missile like right above you?
Yeah, I definitely have not experienced that.
I mean, and to be honest, I thought it was more exciting than I was worried about it, and I'd probably be more scared if I went back to my room and there's like a giant spider.
I don't mind the spiders. If I went back and there was a snake, I wouldn't be happy. I'm good with the spiders. In our house, I'm on spider catching duty if we ever find one.
Okay, deal. But yeah, it's an amazing place, and it's under threat constantly from there are a lot of talk there about Iran attacking them, and there's definitely some worry from like cab drivers and stuff would say, we are really worried about Iran attacking us, and that's one of the Iran was supposedly backing Hamas and was probably pushing Hamas to attack Israel because Israel was starting to get really close with Saudi Arabia. Israel has pretty good ties with Saudi Arabia generally, and Saudi Arabia and Iran hate each other, and they're in a proxy war in Yemen, and it's such a complicated mess down there, and it's hard to talk about Israel without getting super political, but it's like, and I hate to be like the person, why can't everyone just get along? But seriously, why can't everyone just get along? Like,
I mean, but the problem is you've got two groups of people who both believe that their God, which is a different God, gave them that land, and it's pretty hard to overcome. Most territorial disputes, I'm thinking about Northern Ireland here, which we've already talked about in the podcast, but that's on paper perhaps a religious dispute, but it's more a political dispute about whether Northern Ireland should be part of the Republic or should be part of Great Britain, and you can find something resembling a compromise, and not everyone's happy with it, but you can kind of make progress with that. But if two groups of people think that God gave them a piece of land, I don't really know what you do with that, and neither does anyone else, and that's why it's still ongoing.
Yes, it is, and it's in the Palestinian Constitution that basically Israel has to be wiped off the face of the earth, and how do you even deal with that stuff? I mean, how can you get away from it? Now, I will tell you some interesting things that happened there that really surprised me, because in the media, whether both sides, you get the really pro-Israel people who have their beliefs on what Israel should be, and then you have the tends to be the very liberal people that like Palestine and think Israel's like an occupying force, and basically the Zionists are going to take over the world and all that kind of things, and a lot of that stemmed from in the New Testament. It says that it's basically immoral to make interest off of money. So early Christians would not do any kind of banking or borrow money, or they weren't allowed to, because it basically was forbidden in the Bible. So Jews stepped in to fill that gap, and Jews stepped in because they believe in the Old Testament. They stepped in and started becoming bankers and handling money and helping other businesses. And I think people just naturally don't like people that have money and control money, and it's kind of created this like anti-Jew sentiment because they were the ones that controlled money for so long. But that doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means that they filled a niche, kind of like the Chinese do when they go places, of something that other people either weren't willing to do or couldn't do. So I really strongly don't believe in any anti-Jewish sentiments. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And when you're there, I was in Jerusalem, and I got my picture taken and talked to a Muslim police officer in the Israeli police. And his partner, not his life partner, well, I don't know if he has a life partner, but his work partner was Jewish. And they were hanging out smoking cigarettes and laughing and just like normal police would. And their superintendent is Catholic. And
wow.
that's in the Israeli police in Jerusalem. And and the Muslim guy had a big huge beard, and he's got an Israel flag on his shoulder, and those kind of things you just don't see in the media. The media wants to divide everybody on either side, and they really don't want to show, you know what, there's Muslims in the Israeli police, and their partners are Jewish, and their bosses are Catholic, and they all get along fine, and they smoke cigarettes and laugh together and give each other shit, and you never ever see that stuff. And that's one of the reasons I just love to travel, is because then you see that stuff for yourself. And you might not say, oh, you know what, I'm leaving after a few days in Israel, I'm like an expert on Israel, because I'm certainly not. But you come out realizing that it's way more complicated and nuanced than the media has you believe.
Yeah, and most situations are. And the other thing that always strikes me when I travel is that people can generally get along. And it's one of the huge frustrations with a situation like this, which is people will get along if you put them in the same room. People are people. And like I said on the Belfast episode, when there were Catholics and Protestants mixing, and the Protestant guy said to me, they were okay, actually. I met some Catholics, actually, they're okay. You think, well, yeah, of course they're okay. They're just people. And that's one of the big frustrations for me of particularly religious war, is actually, if you took that aside and just went for a drink with that person, you'd probably get on great with them, and it's kind of fostering hate that just doesn't need to exist. But
yeah,
it doesn't solve the overall problem, which is two groups of people think God gave them the same piece of land. But it goes to show, I think, like you suggest, that there's a lot of, I don't want to say propaganda, but there's a lot of taking sides. And the same, I mean, you see it in the Western world, don't you? There are some, I'm quite politically minded. I did a bachelor's degree in politics and follow politics closely. And there are some opinions that people hold that I find abhorrent, but I can probably get on with that person on a basic level. I could probably find common ground with them. And I think with most people, even who have very divergent political opinions, you'll probably find that you share more than you disagree on.
I completely agree with that, and you and I aren't. I mean, it's not like a big secret for the podcast, but you and I aren't particularly religious, and I think, and there's been studies done that of who knows the most about religion, and generally every time they do a study, the group that knows the most about religion are generally atheists, because people who are like, if you're like Southern Baptist, or you're hardcore Southern Baptist, like you'll know a lot about your little slice of Christianity, but they tend to not know anything else about anything. Like they just think Catholics are weird, but they don't know anything about them. They don't understand Judaism. They don't understand Islam, Buddhists. They don't care about any of that stuff. And the same goes for like people, who are Muslim. They tend to know a lot about Islam, but they don't know anything else. People who aren't religious tend to know a lot about different religions. And I would say people who are not religious, but actually are not religious for a reason, like they've thought about it and they've researched it, and things like you and I have. And I thought, when I was when I was there, and it's like you've got all this stuff, what you really need is more not religious people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I remember,
you have them in the military, you have them in the police, you have them in the government, and then they're not going to take sides.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Christopher Hitchens, who was a great literary hero of mine. Yeah, I mean, an hour spent watching Hitchens on YouTube is not an hour wasted, but he was saying, show me the society that was secular and adopted the teachings of the Greek philosophers, and show me the society that did that, which descended into chaos. It won't happen. If everyone is secular, well, you don't have to be secular, but if everyone is open-minded, if everyone accepts that people might have different beliefs, but we can still get along,
yes,
your society is going to be just fine.
Yeah. Well, and you look at what are the least religious countries in the world. Some of the places that are the most stable, like Sweden, Norway.
Yeah, and that's not to say that religion is causing the problem, but when you've got someone who is, there's political belief, and you can change political belief. I've changed my mind on issues, but if you really truly believe that there is a man in the sky who knows about you, who implements certain moral rules, who kind of enforces a way to live, it's very hard to compromise from that.
Yes, especially if you believe that person up in the sky, or that being up in the sky, hates everybody that doesn't have your belief and wants you to hate them too.
And that's why, to me, radical Islam is so scary, because they don't just say, hey, live and let live. So I'm sure most Christians, almost all Christians in America, would say, well, I'm a Christian, I think you should be. I think the world would be better if everyone was Christian, but if you're not, then that's your right and you should get on with your life. Whereas I think the more extreme version of Islam is that they won't rest until everybody has been converted. And it's pretty hard to... I mean, look what America got involved with in Afghanistan and Iraq. You can't just go in and win them over.
Yeah.
They want you to die. They think you're an infidel.
And I thought that was so interesting, because I've heard Israel's, Western, and land, women aren't covered up. Women are, I think, 25% of the military and police. Like they, you see women everywhere in the military. It's very, they're very involved with politics and the government. In other parts of the Middle East, women, a lot of them places, they can't go to school, they can't drive, they're completely covered up. It's very different. And going down the highway, one of the first gigantic billboards I saw was a woman in a bra advertising like bras. And I was like,
you're not going to see that in Saudi Arabia.
No. And I thought I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then you go down the street and there's pride flags everywhere. And this like movement of gay people in the United States that are like so pro-Palestine, I feel like they're so misguided. It's like
I think in the most ridiculous political movements of all time, Queers for Palestine would have to take the crown. If irony was fatal, they would all drop dead. What do they think life is like for queer people in Palestine? I mean, really, the idea that pre-Israel's invasion of Gaza, the queers of Palestine were walking around waving pride flags and holding hands. I mean, what do they think being gay in Palestine is like? I mean,
yeah,
you know what?
I think there's a thing with, and you and I tend to be more progressive, but with ultra progressive people, where they feel like any conflict, whoever has a darker skin is right.
Yes, that's a really good way of putting it.
And the world is more complicated than that.
Yeah, and that I think that is the most ridiculous political movement I've ever heard of, though. Queers for Palestine. I mean, that's just, you can't be gay in Palestine. Don't protest on behalf of Palestine and Palestine's gay people. Palestine's gay people are are not allowed to live the way they want. They're persecuted. It's anyway. You know.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? People being politically active, I generally think is a good thing. I don't.
Yeah.
I encourage people to be politically active and politically involved and express their opinions, but yeah, I mean, come on, like, okay. I just think it's insane. I mean, what?
Yeah, there's certain things where you can be open-minded about, and then there's other things that are just so ridiculous. I mean, it's like now we're gonna get super political, like this stupid military parade that Trump's having tomorrow, or I guess in 2 days. This like $45 million military parade that North Korea has.
Yeah,
and it's like no logical person, whether you're Republican or Democrat, can say that makes sense.
No, and this is a guy who's busy trying to save money, slash money from the government budget.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a good use of money.
Yeah, and if you believe his birthday celebration is worth $45 million to have a military parade, then you're just so far gone in propaganda that I can't even deal with you.
Yeah. I mean, we were just saying how you got to try and find common ground, but yeah, anybody that thinks that's acceptable is insane. What I find hard looking at America is, can you imagine any president ever acting with such a lack of dignity and decency? To think that their birthday is so worthy of celebration that it's worth spending $45 million in the middle of slashing the federal budget.
Yeah. And how can the Republican senators go along with that? I mean, their whole philosophy is small government, not wasting money. Like, how in the world can they support that? And I bet you, if you got any of them privately, they'd be disgusted by it. But politically, they have to publicly support it. But yeah, it's just disgusting right now. The world's such a mess, and you look at, I was looking at crime rates, and the United States is like leads the world in murders. It's way higher up than Israel is,
but I think if you just had a few more guns, then that would solve the problem. You know, because there's 400 million guns in America now. So I think if you got to maybe 500 million, which is what a lot of Republicans would advocate, then I feel like you'd really start to see a drop off.
Yes.
You just need a few more.
If everybody has a gun at the bar, everyone's going to be so scared that something's going to happen that nobody's going to do anything.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's everybody having the ability to kill everyone in the room sounds a lot safer than nobody having the ability to kill everyone in the room.
Now in Israel, you would see people walking around with guns.
Really?
Like civilians, yeah.
Open carry.
Open carry. I saw, and you'd see because Israeli women are very attractive. I would say it's comparable to Italy, and you see a very attractive Israeli woman, and she's got a gun on her hip.
I had no idea they had open carry laws in America. I thought America was kind of the only westernized. I know Israel's in the Middle East, but westernized country that allowed that kind of thing to go on.
And I don't know if you see that stuff. I don't know. Maybe they're off-duty police. Maybe they're off-duty military, and they just wear a gun all the time. Maybe they're just a housewife. I mean, I don't know what their laws are when it came to it, but it surprised me when you see that stuff. And there is a big military presence and police presence pretty much everywhere that I saw.
What you can feel the heightened security.
You can feel it, and really the thing that you feel is that, I mean, it's interesting because here in the United States, when you hear media talk, they focus completely on Gaza. Like, they attacked this hospital, and the Israelis did this, and the Israelis did this, but they're completely focused on their hostages. I mean, when Hamas came across the border and killed, I think, almost 1,200 people from Israel and took tons of hostages. Israel, I don't know that they can ever get over that. They are mad about it, and there are signs everywhere and billboards everywhere. You go to businesses, there's pictures of all the hostages on the wall. They've got little like a smiley face if stuck on it if the hostage has been returned, a sad face if the hostage has been killed. They have the numbers of the hostages lit up at night on one of the skyscrapers. Like at the beach, there's signs saying "Release our hostages." Like they are pissed about it, and it's interesting just knowing that here 1,200 of their people were killed that were just at like a rave and just hanging out in their houses and doing this stuff. And the media like doesn't even really talk about it. They never talk about those hostages, and there's still hostages in Gaza.
Yeah,
So just so strange. So it's a big thing to them. Yeah, it's just a really interesting time there. But maybe we should move on towards the end, talk about like sites and other things in Israel.
I was about to suggest the same thing. We somehow ended up talking about Trump's military parade.
I mean,
queers for Palestine, and
it's
I
hard,
I love
not
riffing.
to talk about it. It's hard not to talk about when something's ridiculous. It's hard not to talk about other ridiculous things, I think. But
yeah, I mean, the one thing one thing I would say about America and the Republicans is until Trump gets out of the way, nothing's going to change because he has come to dominate the party. People have realized that their political career is dependent on going along with all his nonsense. But nobody else is like that. When Trump is gone, there is no Trump 2. You look at J.D. Vance or who was the Florida governor who ran Ron DeSantis. If you look at the pretenders to the throne, none of them speak like Trump. None of them behave like Trump. The Republican Party, I think, as you mentioned, behind closed doors, the individuals would be disgusted by what he's doing. I think once he's gone and they have to find a normal human to run again, they will find their way back to sanity. But right now, if you're a Republican, if you don't go along with Trump, you are politically dead. So until that individual is gone, the Republicans are going to be insane. And what's the law of physics? For every action, there's an equal and opposing reaction, and it just drives the Democrats to do more and more insane things so that they look like a contrast, and the middle ground is vacant right now. But anyway, I think once Trump's gone, the Republicans will find their way back to sanity. As a result, the Democrats will find their way back to sanity. They're in with a shot, but I hate to blame political problems on one man, and it's more complex than that. And there was Sarah Palin back in 2008, and there's been a lot that's led to this, but there is no chance of sanity resuming while Trump is around. So anyway, sorry, just my little.
I heard some Israelis talk about Trump, even though I think they tend to support him in some ways because the Republicans tend to be more pro-Israel. But I heard people comment about how crazy he is, and I don't think he's well respected anywhere else in the world.
I don't think he's well respected anywhere.
Other than half of the United States, that's everywhere else thinks he's an idiot and a lunatic. So, and even they seem to think that about him.
Yeah, they think he's an idiot and a lunatic, but they like it. That's the problem.
Yes, because he supports them.
Yeah.
But yeah, tourism's down 95%. You really feel it. The hotel, there was like one big group that was like a Christian touring group of that was at the hotel. Other than and then there was a group of people from India one day at the hotel, which I assume were there for some sort of business thing, but just like tourists, you just didn't see them. You didn't see them walking around on the beach. You didn't see them at the hotel. You didn't see them in Jerusalem. It's the tourism industry is just absolutely in shambles right now.
But what is it if you do go, whether it's now or in hopefully when things are slightly back to normal, like 5-10 years from now, what is worth seeing from your very brief trip?
So Tel Aviv is just kind of a big city. I'm sure there's some really cool stuff in there. I wasn't really there long enough to see it. There is an old town that I had dinner in that looks really nice. The beach is beautiful. It's right on the Mediterranean. My hotel was right on the beach, and I went and walked along like a boardwalk every morning, and lots of locals jogging and playing volleyball and hanging out at the beach. I would say that it looks past its prime. It's probably what I would think of as like Atlantic City. Like it probably peaked in the 80s, but it's a little run down. And I was right in a really nice area, like with nice hotels, and it was pretty run down. Hotels are really expensive and have always been really expensive. So that's one of the problems with going there is flights are expensive and hotels are expensive. Food is wonderful, and the restaurants are just it's just awesome food. Um, I think if you like hummus and um, grilled meats, and there's just a huge variety, and some really cool, really nice restaurants. I thought that was a big plus. Israeli wine is great. The beer is good. But people seem to drink a lot of wine. I went to a cocktail bar one night. That was really fun. But the most of the historic sites are elsewhere, not in Tel Aviv. So you've got Jerusalem is the big one, of course, and Jerusalem is under the control of Israel, but the international community generally views it as part of Palestine. Um, and it was pretty dead when I was there. And I was told if you go normally, it's like shoulder to shoulder, especially around like the Wailing Wall and some inside some of the churches. But when I was there, it was pretty close to being deserted, because there's just not tourism there. So that's why I was kind of saying if you don't mind the other stuff, and let's say you are like very religious, you're Christian or Muslim or Jewish, and you really want to see that stuff because Jerusalem is kind of the heart of all three of those religions. It's probably a good time to go because you can have time to go see things. And there's things like you see where Jesus was supposedly crucified. There, you can go right to the spot. You can go into the cave where he was resurrected from. You can see the slab of stone that he was set on after he was died. Like you can walk right up to that stuff and be right there and touch it and be part of it. And if that's your belief system, it is a pretty powerful thing. And to go when nobody's really there is the time to do it. I can't imagine what those things would be like in other areas. I got it's not open to the public, but I had an in and I got in to see a piece of the original cross. And even I was raised Lutheran, so I have a lot of knowledge of Christianity, and in just being there and being like, wow, this is probably, I mean, a piece of the original cross that was taken off and put in this like book thing. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. And I saw people just like tears streaming down their face at some of this stuff, and it's a powerful place. And I think that's where when it's a time to go. And you are allowed into different areas, regardless of your religion, which is an interesting thing because before Jerusalem came under the Israelis, when it was held by the Jordanians, they wouldn't let Jews in to Israel. But Jews do let Muslims in. The Wailing Wall has two sides. One side is Christians and Jews. The other side is Muslims, and they can pray on the wall, and you have to go through security for that. But Jerusalem's it's cool. The old town is just like you'd expect. Dates back thousands of years. A lot of it was rebuilt in the 1500s, and you'll be standing there, and there's a synagogue. And 15 feet away from it is a mosque, and 20 feet away from it is an old Christian church, and it's just really cool, and it's such a shame that the world is so divided, and you can't have all these groups just living there in peace and harmony and learning about each other and breaking bread together. It's really too bad.
Yeah, and in some ways that is one of the miracles of America. We're often fed the narrative that it's incredibly divided, but if you think about the melting pot of North America, but particularly the United States, it's pretty remarkable how well people get along.
It is, and I, you and I will say some political stuff, especially with Trump right now, but I really believe in America, and I believe in the American dream, and I believe in the reasons why America was founded. It was basically the only country in the world that was ever founded on democratic principles and invented them. And it's also the only country ever that went to war to end slavery. Like we've got amazing history, and and it is amazing. You know, I work with people who are all different religions, and we all get along, and there's never any problems. And I love hearing about different people's religions. I like going to different churches and going to and learning about what different people believe and do. And I think it's fascinating. And it's just too bad the rest of the world isn't always like that. Isn't always as open. Especially the birth of all these religions, because Islam has a lot of their foundation is in Israel and is in Jerusalem. They've kind of tried to move it now to say it's in Mecca and stuff, so they have their own place. But a lot of stuff with like Muhammad was at that wall. I mean, it's a big thing for all those religions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's amazing that America has managed to do that, and so many westernized countries have managed to do that. And we hear about high-profile attacks, but the reality is, we do in the West do a pretty good job of people getting along despite their differences. And it's just a shame, as you say, that is not the case in Israel. But it's still I know you were only there briefly, and it was a very odd time to be there. But what an amazing experience to have gone and seen those sites.
It was really an amazing trip, and I'm so glad I went. And I saw things and spoke to people and learned things that I wasn't expecting. You know, like Muslim police officers in Jerusalem, having the missile go off and having the Iron Dome take it out above the bar, right? You know, is just a crazy thing. I don't know that I would really recommend someone to go there now, unless you just really don't want to deal with the crowds and you're very adventurous. For the average person, it's probably not the time to go. You wait until things calm down and go with a tour group and not have to worry about missiles being fired into the country.
Yeah, but I'm not in any way, shape, or form religious, but and I honestly had never really thought about going to Jerusalem for that reason. But hearing you talk about it and hearing you say actually it's quite moving, regardless of your affiliation. Affiliation's the wrong word, but regardless of your beliefs, I would like to go.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you'll hear terms where people say like, they'll say I'm Jewish, but I'm I'm more a secular Jew. Like I'm not religious. And I actually heard someone the other day refer to himself as culturally Catholic.
Nice, that's a good phrase.
And I feel like I'm that way in a lot of ways. My great grandfather was a minister. His dad was a minister. My family came from England in the 1600s, and my in my blood or whatever is Western Christian culture, and I think you can appreciate it somewhat because that's culturally where we're from, and culturally where a lot of our belief systems come from, without necessarily believing all of it in because we've modernized. But I think it's still very moving because we're still from that Western culture.
And it also helps you understand other people's beliefs, not just your own. I mean, it's pretty hard to make any progress if you have no idea what people who are different from you are thinking. And that's one of the beauties of travel is I might go and think, okay, I got a new insight into how Christians think and how Muslims think. And whilst I still don't believe in their books, I feel I understand better where they're coming from.
Yes, and you realize that there's nuggets of truth, all that stuff. It's not even religions that we might not believe in. I mean, Jesus was a real person. Buddha was a real person. Muhammad was a real person. Like they lived in the lives, and they had followers and supporters, and there's places they were and relics from those eras. And it's not like you can say, well, these people never existed. They were just completely created. The earthly people existed.
yeah, they did. Whether they were the sons of
God, but
that's another question.
It's just they existed. Yeah, the pharaohs existed. Moses existed. Like these were real people, and to be places where these people were is really, it is moving, and it's really, really cool. And yeah, I thought it was a great trip. I'm so glad I went, and it was interesting because I've always wanted to go to Tel Aviv, but I'd never really thought like, oh, I really want to go to Jerusalem. I more wanted to go to Tel Aviv and see the modern city and kind of see how Israelis lived. But really the highlight of the trip was going to all that the ancient stuff in Jerusalem.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I think that's one of the great things about travel and about your trip just now is you come away realizing that for your whole life, I was about to say how many years your life has been, and suddenly stopped myself. But you know, for X number of years, you've thought a certain way, and suddenly you're enlightened, and it just goes to show, you really appreciating how little you know is true intelligence, and there's always more to learn, and there's always a new perspective to see. And it sounds like you've kind of gone through that in the last few days. And I have a little bit in the last 50 minutes just listening.
And I would say, if you want to just like total random thought, if I think a cool movie that had a lot of ties to Israel was World War Z.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's so awesome with Brad Pitt. But basically in the movie, the Israelis were the only country that figured out that the zombies were going to happen and took steps to do it. And Brad Pitt flies into Israel to try to figure out how they knew it and what happened. And he's in Jerusalem, and it is a really, really cool movie. And he's trying to get out, and he's with the Israeli military. And if you like, and it's not a super scary movie, it's more like an adventure movie, but if you like seeing different locations in the world, because that's a really good movie to see it, and I think you get a good sense of kind of what it at least looks like down there. One thing I'll say too that I forgot to say before we're in, traffic is horrible. Absolutely atrocious.
Imagine what it's like in tourist season.
Oh my God, it's so bad. You know, you might be better off walking if you're in Tel Aviv instead of trying to take like a cab. There's no Uber there. I think Uber pulled out because they're worried about the political situation. But it takes forever to go anywhere. So you need tons of time to get to the airport, tons of time to get anywhere. All the cars are dinged up. Like it's all these narrow streets and people parking all over the place. But it's definitely not a. It's one of those places you look at a map and you're like, oh, we could just take an Uber there in 5 minutes. It'll take you an hour to get 2 miles. Like it's really bad. But logistically, there's some of that. But overall, awesome place. Highly recommended it. I just don't know I would go there now unless you're very, very adventurous.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, it seems like, incredibly adventurous, charismatic, handsome guys like us. You know, it's but I think that's probably true of most cities. Just quickly, they were talking in London about introducing a fast walking lane on Oxford Street, which is one of the main arteries through London, and there was going to be a fast walking lane, and you had to be doing 4 miles an hour if you wanted to walk in this lane. And then the joke was, if you wanted to go slower, then you drive.
that is good.
So I don't know if they ever implemented it. I went to the last time I went to Oxford Street. I'm still getting over the fact that it cost £20 an hour to park. I nearly had a bloody heart attack.
Wow!
I was there 2 hours as well, and I went to the meet at the end. It's £40.
Wow!
Tearing it up and throwing it into the street. Anyway, hey, that was super interesting. I know you've got to get on with your day and take another flight, which kind of blows my mind. But
it's all right. After 30 hours of flying yesterday, I'm really excited to go on another plane.
Yeah, it'll be great, and waiting to board and all the fun stuff.
Well, I'll go to the lounge and have some drinks, but my son's going with me on this one, so misery loves company.
Misery loves company and gin and tonic, so just go get a drink, relax.
Exactly.
All right, great to talk, great to hear all about it, and let's speak soon.
Okay, thanks.